Hi, everybody. This is Mrs. Thompson here to talk with you about your week 3 process of course registration, your course selection process for next year. This week, it's time to get organized and making sure that you take a minute to review all the work that you've done so far in advisory, to research classes and graduation demonstrations and all those options available, and then using that to plan your classes for next year. So far during advisory over the past couple weeks, you have spent some time looking at our course selection resources, and you've seen them in advisory. They're also on our website. If you go over to the resource page and scroll down just a little bit, you'll see the presentation that you have been working your way through so far. So just an overview, just to refresh your memory, talking a little bit about the graduation requirements from 27J. So realizing that there are those 4 components to graduation, um, making a plan, completing your credits, completing a demonstration in your community service, and then also knowing what those demonstration options look like, what those scores are, and the other options that you have to demonstrate, which include industry certifications. So that's a little bit more of the work that we want to have you do this week if you haven't already. Looking at those industry certifications, and again, you can find those. There's a really helpful page on the website under the graduation demonstrations. And again, if you scroll down just a little bit here, you'll see that there's a video, there's a list of the demonstration options, but this is the one I wanted to have you look at, is the one that has teacher names. So making sure that if you haven't already reached out to find out more information about these programs and classes, that you do so this week. We want to get some ideas of the classes that you're going to take in order to meet these industry certifications, concurrent enrollment opportunities, advanced placement classes. So if you are curious about, let's say, the teacher cadet program, then you want to contact Ms. Langen and find out, what classes do I need to take for that? What does that look like? So if you haven't, again, already done that, this is the time to do that, so you get more information about the industry certifications, those classes and programs, all the way through concurrent enrollment and AP. So that's the first step. The second step, we want to have you have conversations with your current teachers, your core teachers. So thinking a little bit about the other pieces that you've been working on this week, that's been your personal pathway document. And so you've taken a look at what classes you're thinking about to emphasize and highlight kind of your future career, college plans, workforce plans, whatever those plans might be, making that intentional plan, and then thinking about your demonstrations in this box here. But then the other part of that is checking your credits and making sure you're on track. And so you'll notice that some of these classes are pretty scripted, as far as English 9 leads to English 10, US history typically leads to world history, but then math is pretty open. So this is the week that we want you to have those conversations with your math teacher, with your science teacher, with any teacher, and that you're kind of curious about what the next class in the typical progression might be. We want you to be having those conversations and thinking about those answers this week. So then, taking that information that you've gathered over these past few weeks, it's time to select those classes that you want to take for next year. So this student, for example, is a current 9th grader looking at 10th grade classes, planning classes for 10th grade. So this student's already taken English 9. So the next step in their credit progression is to take English 10. So you should have downloaded and copied your course selection sheet from your advisory, from your Google Classroom. There is a copy on the website as well if you need one. This student looks at English 9. Next is English 10. So they're just going to highlight English 10 on their course selection sheet. Okay. So then the next credit check is world history, which comes after US history. So that student, again, maybe had that conversation with a teacher to make sure, but knows that they should be taking world history next year. So finding world history on your course selection sheet, taking a minute to highlight world history. Back to the credit check, again, kind of keeping that progression going. So math, that's the important conversation to have with your current teacher. Figure out which class you're taking currently, what class typically comes after that, and making sure you're being thoughtful about that step in the course selection process. So going up to math, so let's say the student's currently in Integrated 1, then they're going to highlight Integrated 2 as the planned math class for next year. back to the credit check. Science comes next. So again, similar conversation with your science teacher, figuring out the next typical class in the progression for science. And then based on that, going back to your course selection sheet and selecting that next science class. Okay, so then that covers your 4 core classes. You have English, math, science, and social studies all on that first page of your course selection sheet. Now we want you to look at page 2. And this is where some of those other conversations come into play that you've had regarding programs, pathways, thinking about your personal pathway toward graduation. And we want you to select at least 8 elective options on this page. And again, that can meet credit requirements for graduation, that can meet a pathway for an industry certification, for a demonstration. It all depends kind of on your own personal pathway. So for example, the student went back to their credit check and they had already taken Spanish 1 in 9th grade and they wanted to keep going with Spanish. And so they're going to go back to their course selection sheet and find the next level of Spanish that they wanted to take. So that's under world languages. And they're going to highlight Spanish 2. Okay. And then again, back to here, they took 1 credit of PE as a freshman. They decided they want to take their next credit of PE. So they want to get that done as a sophomore. So they're going to sign up for leisure sports. So they're going to find that and highlight that on their course selection sheet as well. And then in terms of CTE, this student hasn't taken any CTE classes yet, and they've had some conversations about a potential pathway in computer science. So they're going to find computers and they're going to start, they've talked to Mr. Flynn, they want to start with Intro to Computer Technology. So they're going to highlight that for next year. And then they still have other electives that they can take and there's still room in their schedule. So they're going to go back to their course selection sheet and they're going to look at some of those other things that they were thinking about doing. So they were curious about psychology. They heard that was a really great class. They're going to highlight that. Okay. So that's the process for this week. So by the end of this week in advisory, we want to make sure that you have this course selection sheet completely highlighted with your 4 cores with 8 elective options. And so that way, next week, when you go into Infinite Campus, into your academic plan, all you'll need is this course selection sheet, and that will allow you to plug in your classes next week into Infinite Campus. So this is the only piece of paper, the only digital document that you will need to finish out the course selection process next week. So it's just taking all of that work that you've done over the past few weeks and condensing it down into one sheet, one document that you can refer to for next week. And good luck with your course selection process.